Welcome. Today we're taking a look at a cinematic event that really became something much, much bigger than just a film.
We are.
We're exploring James Cameron's 1997 epic, Titanic.
And this isn't just about its blockbuster success, although, it was obviously a huge one.
Right. It's about the incredible historical commitment, the absolutely brutal production challenges, and I think the cultural shockwave that just followed it everywhere.
It's one of those rare global phenomenons, isn't it? It seamlessly blends this actual profound tragedy of the 1912 sinking.
A tragedy where about 1,500 lives were lost.
Exactly. It blends that with a fictionalized romance. But for our analysis today, we're really going to set aside the familiar plot of Jack and Rose.
We want to concentrate on what was happening behind the camera, the logistical nightmare, the casting choices, and the huge commercial and cultural impact it still has.
It really does.
So our mission really is to understand why this film, even all these decades later, demands preservation and why it still generates so much debate.
We're looking at the sheer scale of the risk involved.
And when you look back, you see a film that grossed over $1.84 billion worldwide initially.
And tied the all-time record with 11 Academy Awards.
Including Best Picture and Best Director. It was, you could argue, the biggest financial gamble in Hollywood history.
A gamble that paid off beyond anyone's wildest dreams. And it's so important to remember that, Titanic wasn't just a movie set.
No?
It was a functioning, to-scale recreation of a historical monument. And that commitment to detail, well, it informs everything from Cameron's first creative spark all the way to how we received the final product.
So let's start there at the source, with James Cameron himself. When you look at the material, his motivation for making this film wasn't about telling a love story, really.
No.
Or even winning awards. It feels like pure, unadulterated engineering obsession.
That is the key distinction. Cameron had this long-standing fascination with shipwrecks. He actually called the Titanic wreck the Mount Everest of shipwrecks.
So his ambition wasn't storytelling.
Not primarily, no. He wanted Hollywood's money specifically to fund an expedition. He wanted to go down and see the actual wreck site 3 miles down on the ocean floor.
So he basically pitched a film as a way to fund his own deep-sea exploration.
Yeah.
How did he turn that cold technical interest into something that studio executives would actually buy into?
Well, he had to make it palatable. The pitch he gave to 20th Century Fox was famously Romeo and Juliet on the Titanic. He knew that raw history wouldn't sell tickets the same way a powerful romance would. And the executives, they were very skeptical at first.
They were probably imagining a long, expensive historical drama that nobody would see.
Exactly. They wanted something more like The Abyss or True Lies, another one of his action films. But Cameron was clever. He convinced them that the real-life footage he was going to capture of the wreck would be, unparalleled promotional material.
So the expedition itself was part of the marketing.
It was. He argued that the cost of the expedition plus a little bit more for the film production itself would actually be less than what they'd spend on just building elaborate models and using CGI alone.
That's a fascinating strategy, a blend of research funding and production.
It is.
And that focus on research, it just speaks volumes about his commitment to accuracy.
Yeah.
This went way beyond the typical prep for a historical drama, didn't it?
Oh, absolutely. This wasn't just about set dressing. Cameron put in 6 months of rigorous, exhaustive research. He looked into the historical crew, the passengers.
He saw the film as more than just fiction.
He saw it as a historical document, something that had to honor the 1,500 people who died. He felt it was his mandate to get it right.
So he created this detailed timeline.
Incredibly detailed, a timeline of the voyage and the sinking, and he had historical experts on hand verifying everything constantly. His goal, and this is a quote, was to achieve a definitive visualization of this moment in history as if you'd gone back in a time machine and shot it.
It's interesting, though, because his vision wasn't entirely original. He was drawing from things that had come before.
And he was very transparent about that. He credited the 1958 British film A Night to Remember as a huge inspiration.
Right.
He admitted he liberally copied specific dialogue and even whole scenes from that classic.
Like the steerage party.
The steerage party, the vibrant atmosphere there, and that poignant depiction of the musicians playing on as the chaos mounts. He wasn't trying to reinvent the visual history. He was trying to perfect it.
And the riskiest part of all this research, it had to be those dives in 1995. The dives to the actual wreck.
That experience was fundamentally transformative. for the whole project. The crew went down 12 separate times in '95 using Russian submersibles.
And this was incredibly dangerous.
Highly dangerous. These vehicles had to withstand immense water pressure. Any kind of structural failure at that depth would have been, instantly fatal.
And the conditions weren't ideal.
Not at all. They faced powerful currents, bad weather. Getting clear, stable footage was a constant battle.
There was even some physical contact with the wreck during those dives, wasn't there?
There was, yes. During one of the descents, one of the submersibles accidentally collided with the Titanic's hull. It was right near the entrance to the grand staircase.
Did it cause much damage?
Some minor damage, but it also inadvertently exposed more of the interior, which they could then film. But that proximity to the disaster site, it wasn't just a logistical challenge, it was deeply emotional.
And that brings up the ethical weight of what they were doing. They were filming what is essentially a mass grave.
Cameron talked about this a lot. He said that working around the wreck gave them a strong sense of the profound sadness and injustice of it. He realized the film carried a great mantle of responsibility. He had to tell the story with sincerity and respect. The visual message had to convey the real magnitude of the loss. It elevated the whole project beyond simple spectacle.
So if the history itself was, as he said, a great novel that really happened, why was the fictional story Jack and Rose? Why was that even necessary? Why not just tell the historical events as they happened?
And that's where you see the commercial and the emotional brilliance of the project. Cameron knew that the disaster, over 80 years later, had become a bit of a cold morality tale.
Just names and dates.
Just names and dates. The love story was the essential emotional vehicle. By getting the audience completely invested in the immediate, intimate fate of Jack and Rose, the mass destruction that follows is felt not just as history, but as a personal tragedy.
It gives you the experience of living the history.
Exactly, not just observing it. The romance became the engine needed to pull this colossal historical freight train.
And he needed a way to connect that past tragedy to a modern audience. That's where the framing device comes in.
Precisely. The elderly Rose, played by Gloria Stewart, she serves as that vital bridge. She lets the film see the present and the past all through memory.
And her character wasn't entirely made up.
No, the elderly Rose was partly inspired by the life of Beatrice Wood, an American artist and centenarian. She embodied this life of freedom and creative spirit that the young Rose was so desperate for.
And then there's the treasure hunter, Brock Lovett. He seems to represent the kind of cynicism Cameron was trying to push against.
Brock Lovett, played by Bill Paxton, he's the personification of the audience's initial interest. He's just there for the treasure, the heart of the ocean.
The material object.
All about the wealth, the artifact value. And it's a very deliberate choice that only after he hears Rose's full, intimate account of the sinking does he finally grasp the human element. He even admits he never understood it until then, and he abandons his search.
It's the film's way of making sure the audience makes that same shift.
Exactly, from the material to the emotional.
So let's move from that vision to the people who had to anchor it. That core duo, Jack and Rose, are so iconic now, but the casting was difficult, starting with Jack Dawson.
Jack, the poor nomadic artist from Chippewa Falls, Wisconsin. He had to be this charismatic, romantic lead, but also feel real. Cameron's team looked at so many young actors.
Matthew McConaughey, Billy Crudup.
Stephen Dorff, too. But the feeling was they were all a bit too mature for the character's intended age, which was around 20.
And Tom Cruise was interested.
He was, but the cost to get him would have just blown the budget before they'd even built a single set.
And Cameron's mind was also on an actor he never got the chance to cast.
That's right. It's often forgotten that he initially pictured someone with the intense, sensitive quality of River Phoenix,
who had tragically passed away a few years earlier.
Yes, in 1993. So when Leonardo DiCaprio came into the picture, he was 21, already a rising star, but he was hesitant. He wasn't sure about the overt romanticism of the part.
He didn't want to read the romantic lines.
He refused at first. He thought the scene was too cheesy, too melodramatic. Cameron had to really sit him down and explain that Jack needed that approachable, classic Hollywood charm.
Like Jimmy Stewart or Gregory Peck.
Exactly. And it was actually Kate Winslet who sealed the deal during their screen test. She was so impressed by their chemistry.
She called his assistant, didn't she?
She did. She called and said, "He's great. Even if you don't pick me, you absolutely must pick him."
And speaking of Jack Dawson, there's that incredible, unbelievable detail that blurs the line between the fiction and the real tragedy.
It's truly remarkable. Jack Dawson is a completely fictional character.
Right.
But after the film came out, it was discovered that in Fairview Cemetery in Halifax, Nova Scotia, where 121 recovered victims are buried, there is a grave. And it's labeled simply J. Dawson.
And the producers had no idea.
No idea at all. It was a complete coincidence. But it gave this fictional character an unintended historical anchor. It deepened that feeling of reality for so many people who visited the gravesite.
On the other side of that social divide, you have Rose DeWitt Bukater, the
Mhm.
17-year-old first-class passenger. And Winslet's commitment to getting that role was, well, it was legendary.
She was absolutely relentless. You have to remember, actresses like Gwyneth Paltrow, Winona Ryder, Claire Danes, they all turned the part down.
They felt the role wasn't strong enough or the shoot was just too demanding.
And Winslet saw it as a career-defining opportunity. She hounded Cameron. She sent him notes. She even sent a single rose with a card signed, "From your Rose."
That's dedication.
It showed him she had the exact blend of determination and passion he needed. He said she had this crucial joie de vivre that convinced him audiences would root for her character's escape from Edwardian society.
And their most famous intimate scene, the sketching scene, was filmed very early on.
That's a great piece of production trivia. It was one of the first scenes they shot because the main set just wasn't ready yet.
And it wasn't a spontaneous moment.
No, it was meticulously planned. Cameron himself did the charcoal drawing of Rose. And Kate Winslet, she was posing, but she was wearing a bathing suit under the cloak.
And Cameron saw the scene as being about freedom.
Exactly. The subtext was about Rose taking this huge, exhilarating step toward emotional and physical freedom, symbolically shedding the suffocating expectations of her class.
Let's touch on the fictional antagonists who kind of represent that rigid class structure.
You have Billy Zane as Cal Hockley, the wealthy, arrogant heir. He's the embodiment of the entitled upper class and a direct threat to Jack.
And he's the one who frames Jack for theft with the Heart of the Ocean necklace.
He does. And then you have Rose's mother, Ruth, played by Frances Fisher. She's just as compelling. Her entire identity is built on this facade of status, even though her family is deeply in debt.
And she hates Jack.
Vehemently. Even after he saves her daughter's life. Her fear of social ruin is just so much greater than any concern for Rose's happiness or even her safety.
The Heart of the Ocean is so central. What about the prop itself?
The necklace in the film was designed by the jewelers Asprey and Gerard. It used cubic zirconias in white gold, but after the film's success, they were commissioned to make a real one.
A real version.
A real high-value version. It had a magnificent 171-carat heart-shaped Ceylon sapphire, set in platinum, surrounded by 103 diamonds.
And it was sold for charity.
It was. It sold at auction for $1.4 million, with the proceeds going to the Diana, Princess of Wales Memorial Fund, and Aid for AIDS.
So now we move to the historical figures, and this is where the portrayals generated a lot of public discussion, and in some cases, real controversy. Let's start with Thomas Andrews, the ship's builder.
Victor Garber played him as this figure of quiet decency and modesty, and the film has that famous, incredibly moving scene of him standing by the clock in the smoking room, lamenting his failure to build an unsinkable ship.
But that's not quite accurate, is it?
It's powerful cinema, but survivor testimony suggests that Andrews, while devastated, spent his final hour actively and calmly helping passengers, urging them to put on life belts, find boats.
So he didn't just retreat to await his fate.
It seems not. The cinematic legend contradicts the historical accounts of his final actions.
What about Margaret Molly Brown? She was quite a character in real life.
She was. And Kathy Bates really captured her essence. She was seen as new money, dismissed by the elites like Ruth.
And she earned her nickname, the Unsinkable Molly Brown.
She absolutely did.
Yeah.
For her courage in Lifeboat 6, the film shows her taking control, demanding they turn back to look for survivors, which she really did. She tried to commandeer the lifeboat from the quartermaster.
Her portrayal really highlights that class conflict.
It does, between the established aristocracy and this emerging, self-made American class.
Now, the most difficult historical depiction was of First Officer William Murdoch. This was a major controversy.
This is probably the most sensitive part of the film's historical adaptation. Murdoch, played by Ewan Stewart, was the officer on the bridge when the ship hit the iceberg.
And the film shows him panicking.
It shows him in a moment of extreme panic during the rush for the lifeboats. He shoots an Irish third-class passenger, Tommy Ryan, then another passenger, and then immediately commits suicide.
And his family objected strongly.
Immensely. His nephew, in particular, felt it deeply damaged the historical reputation of a man who was widely seen as a hero who acted bravely under unimaginable pressure.
And the studio had to respond to that. It shows that delicate balance, doesn't it, between artistic license and historical responsibility.
It does. The backlash was so intense that Fox vice president, Scott Neeson, actually traveled to Murdoch's small hometown in Scotland.
To apologize in person.
In person. He delivered an official apology to the family and the community and made a £5,000 donation to the local high school for the William Murdoch Memorial Prize.
But Cameron defended his portrayal.
He did, later in the DVD commentary. He acknowledged the pain it may have caused, but argued that he saw Murdoch as an honorable man devoted to duty. He pointed out that Murdoch launched half of his lifeboats before the officer on the other side launched even one. He maintained that some officers did fire warning shots that night to maintain order, trying to contextualize the chaos.
What about the captain and the head of the White Star Line?
Captain Edward John Smith, played by Bernard Hill, was on his planned final voyage. The film shows him retreating into the wheelhouse as the water crashes in.
A symbolic end.
Very symbolic. Historically, accounts of his death are conflicting. Some say he was last seen freezing near a collapsible boat. J. Bruce Ismay, played by Jonathan Hyde, is portrayed as arrogant and reckless.
The film implies he pressured the captain to go faster.
It does, which is a popular myth, but historical evidence doesn't really support that direct pressure. Ismay was branded a coward by the press for surviving, for getting into a collapsible boat.
But amidst all that action and controversy, the film gave us one of the most heartbreakingly beautiful moments with Isidore and Ida Strauss.
Their scene is incredibly poignant, and it's well-grounded in historical testimony. Ida Strauss refused to get in a lifeboat.
She wouldn't leave her husband.
She wouldn't. She was honoring her wedding vow. And Isidore, in turn, refused to take a seat while women and children were still waiting.
And the film shows them embracing in their stateroom as the water comes in.
A moment of profound devotion. And witnesses did see the elderly couple embracing on the deck shortly before being swept away. So Cameron really captured the spirit of their loyalty.
Let's talk about the production itself. The sheer physical scale of this thing is what made it the most expensive film ever made at the time, a $200 million budget.
The engineering effort was just monumental. It meant building an entire studio from the ground up.
And they had the original blueprints.
They managed to secure them from Harland and Wolff, which was crucial because they were thought to be lost. This allowed for this meticulous recreation. And then they built Baja Studios in Rosarito, Mexico,
turning acres of coastline into a massive studio complex.
the largest dedicated to a single film. And the centerpiece, of course, was that tank.
The Horizon tank, built right next to the Pacific.
The scale was staggering. 17 million gallons of water. It was engineered to give a 270-degree ocean backdrop so they could shoot the ship replica from almost any angle without land in the background.
The logistics of just maintaining that tank must have been immense.
A huge operational task in itself.
And the ship replica. It was a mix of full-scale and, I guess, optical tricks.
That's right. The boat deck and A deck were built nearly to full scale, and they were fully operational sets. But the funnels and some other sections were shrunk by about 10%.
A clever way to make it all fit in the tank.
And maintain perspective for the cameras.
The Grand Staircase is one of the most famous sets in movie history, but even that was altered for filming.
It was recreated meticulously from photos, but for safety and to allow camera crews access, the whole structure was widened by 30%.
And reinforced with steel.
Reinforced underneath with steel girders. They used the same techniques as the original builders for the oak paneling and carvings, but the hidden infrastructure was completely modern and robust.
And that detail expanded to the smallest props.
An obsessive commitment to authenticity. Since it was the maiden voyage, everything had to look brand new. They didn't just worry about the big sets, they manufactured everything.
The carpets, the light fixtures.
The upholstery, even the cutlery and crockery, each piece with the authentic White Star Line crest, all based on original designs. Cameron even hired 2 renowned Titanic historians to be on set at all times to verify every single detail.
And the physical demands on the cast and crew were brutal, made worse by Cameron's reputation for perfectionism.
He had a formidable reputation, an uncompromising, hard-charging perfectionist. The crew nicknamed him Maze Jims, Jim spelled backward.
That says a lot.
It reflects the feeling that he was this almost impossible force driving them forward. The shoot expanded from 138 days to 160. And because so many scenes were in the water, a lot of cast members, including Kate Winslet, were constantly sick.
Colds, flu, kidney infections.
All from the long hours in unheated water. Winslet later said she'd only work with Cameron again for an astronomical paycheck, which really reflects the intensity of it all.
And then came that bizarre, dangerous incident in Nova Scotia, the PCP-laced soup.
It remains one of the wildest stories in film history. August 1996, they're shooting the modern-day scenes in Dartmouth, Nova Scotia. Someone, we still don't know who, laced a batch of lobster chowder with PCP.
A powerful hallucinogen.
A very powerful hallucinogenic drug.
And what was the result?
Over 50 people were rushed to the hospital. Cameron, Bill Paxton. One crew member described the emergency room as bedlam, with people completely out of it.
Thankfully, everyone recovered.
They did, but it just underscores the immense, possibly volatile pressure cooker that set had become. The police investigation was eventually closed in 1999 without ever identifying who did it.
And all this pressure, it drove the budget higher and higher, until the Fox executives started to panic.
The costs spiraled to about $1 million for every single minute of screen time. And the runtime, 3 hours and 14 minutes, was another huge concern.
They were worried it would limit the number of showings per day.
Exactly. Capping the potential revenue. They desperately suggested cutting an entire hour from the film.
And Cameron's response was characteristically defiant.
His refusal was iconic. He basically told them, you want to cut my movie, you're going to have to fire me, you're going to have to kill me.
He put his own money on the line.
To show his conviction, he offered to forfeit his entire $8 million director's salary and his share of the initial profits. The studio, predicting a failure, actually accepted his terms.
And that forced Fox to find a partner to share the risk.
They had to. The risk was too high for one studio. After being rejected by Universal, they successfully partnered with Paramount Pictures.
So Paramount took on the domestic distribution.
They did. For North America, injecting another $65 million, Fox kept the international rights. As one Fox executive later admitted, Cameron forced them to choose between an expensive bad movie or a more expensive, potentially great movie. They gambled on greatness.
Beyond the physical sets, this film was a landmark for special effects, especially its use of digital water.
Cameron was always at the forefront of digital effects. From The Abyss and Terminator 2, he really leveraged the power of digital domain and Pacific data images.
Because water effects in older films often looked, well, fake.
They did. They relied on slow motion, and it looked obvious. Cameron used complex digital algorithms to create realistic digital water, smoke, steam, and seamlessly integrated it with the huge practical sets.
And they populated the decks in a new way, too.
They did. To create the massive crowds for the dock scenes and the sinking, they couldn't afford thousands of extras. So they used motion capture to create digital extras, or digital minions.
So they'd record a few actors and then multiply them?
Hundreds of times over. Cameron even scanned the faces of effects supervisors and their kids to populate some of those deck shots. It was very early, but very effective.
But they still relied heavily on miniatures.
The miniatures were essential. They built a highly detailed 45-foot-long miniature of the ship and a separate 65-foot model of the stern designed specifically to break apart over and over again.
Which brings us to his commitment to showing the ship break in two.
Yes, he insisted on it. Previous films often showed the Titanic sinking gracefully in one piece, which he called a graceful slide.
He felt that was misleading.
Completely. He was determined to show the terrifyingly chaotic event that it really was. He forced the effects team to create a much more violent, realistic depiction of the breakup.
The detail for the freezing passengers was also horrific, but necessary.
It was meticulous. To convey that terrifying cold of the North Atlantic, they developed specific effects. They used a special powder that crystallized instantly on contact with water.
To create the look of flash freezing.
Exactly. And they coated hair and clothes with wax to enhance the look of ice and frostbite. They wanted the visual horror to match the reality.
Now let's talk about a major creative choice to leave something out. For all his focus on historical detail, Cameron deliberately omitted the story of the nearby SS Californian.
This is a fascinating moment where the storyteller consciously overrules the historian. The Californian was the closest ship, but its radio was off, and its crew misinterpreted the distress flares.
And he filmed a scene for it.
He did, but he cut it from the final version.
Why? Why sacrifice such a crucial historical detail?
Cameron explained that he wanted the Titanic story to be self-contained. He saw the sinking as a metaphor for the end of an era, for human hubris. Including the Californian would introduce this layer of external blame, of distraction.
It made it about someone else's mistake.
Exactly. By leaving it out, he reinforced the sense that once the iceberg struck, the people on that ship were sealed in their own little world, isolated. He prioritized emotional truth over every single historical footnote.
He also cut a major action sequence.
The fight scene, yes. It was between Jack and Cal's valet, Lovejoy, in the flooded first-class dining saloon.
Why cut it?
Test audiences felt it was unrealistic. The idea of risking your life for a necklace, for mere wealth, in the face of certain death just didn't ring true. In that moment of crisis, the focus had to be on survival and love, not on material things.
Finally, the sound. James Horner's score is iconic. For the theme song is maybe even more famous, and it was made against Cameron's wishes.
Cameron had no interest in having a pop song in his film. He'd been listening to Enya while writing and actually tried to get her to do the score, but she declined.
So he went back to James Horner.
He did. They had a famously difficult relationship on Aliens, but they reconciled, and Horner's instrumental score used the ethereal vocals of the Norwegian singer Sissel Kyrkjebø.
But My Heart Will Go On was a completely separate operation.
It was written entirely in secret by Horner and lyricist Will Jennings. Celine Dion was initially hesitant to even record the demo.
Her husband convinced her.
He did, and Horner had to wait for just the right moment to play the finished demo for Cameron. Cameron eventually approved it, but mainly because he saw its commercial potential.
He admitted it was a way to appease anxious studio executives.
Right. They were terrified about the budget and the delays, and he knew a guaranteed hit song would help calm them down, and that decision paid off.
Immensely is an understatement.
The soundtrack, with that song, went diamond. It became the best-selling album in the world in 1998, selling over 27 million copies. It wasn't just a film score. It became a cultural force all on its own.
When the film finally came out, it was facing so much skepticism, the cost, the delays. No one predicted what happened next. It was an unprecedented commercial behemoth.
It just shattered every record. For 12 years, Titanic was the highest-grossing film of all time until Cameron's own Avatar surpassed it in 2010.
It was the first film to hit $1 billion.
It was, and with the re-releases, it became only the second film ever to cross $2 billion worldwide.
The staying power it had in theaters is something we just don't see anymore.
The theatrical run was staggering. It stayed at #1 at the North American box office for 15 consecutive weeks.
Unheard of.
Especially for a film that was over 3 hours long, which limited the number of daily showings. Theaters had to schedule midnight screenings, which stayed packed.
And what drove that was repeat viewings on a massive scale.
That was the core of its success. The typical repeat viewing rate for a blockbuster is maybe 5%. For Titanic, it was over 20%.
People weren't just going to see a movie.
Cameron said it himself. People were returning to re-experience a powerful, shared emotional event. They'd bring friends, family. It became a kind of communal ritual.
But despite that popular embrace, the critical reception was very polarized, especially about the script.
It was divided, yes. Critics universally praised the technical craftsmanship, the visuals, but many slammed the dialogue as simplistic or melodramatic.
Kenneth Turan of the Los Angeles Times gave that infamous review.
He did. He called it a hackneyed, completely derivative copy of old Hollywood romances. He basically said Cameron's writing wasn't sophisticated enough for the story.
And Cameron defended his work against that. What was his argument?
He argued that critics like Turan were making a fundamental error. He said they mistake archetype for cliché. Cameron insisted the script was intentionally direct and earnest. It used the universals of human experience and emotion. He felt the simplicity of the dialogue allowed anyone from age 8 to 80 to access that shared emotional experience of love and loss. The melodrama was an intentional choice to maximize empathy.
The film's success was often dismissed as just Leomania.
That narrative that it was just fodder for teenage girls was pervasive. It was used by critics to diminish its artistic merit. But commercial analysis debunked that.
It wasn't just young women.
No. They certainly drove the initial repeat viewings, but the appeal was universal. There was a strong emotional attachment among men, too, who often admired Jack's sense of adventure and his ambition. The film worked because it integrated massive action and spectacle with a universally relatable romance.
And its enduring legacy is proven by its preservation and the incredible effort put into its anniversaries.
It was formally recognized in 2017 when the Library of Congress selected it for preservation in the National Film Registry.
Calling it culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant.
And the re-releases were huge undertakings. The 2012 3D conversion cost $18 million and took 60 weeks to produce. It ended up becoming the highest-grossing re-released film of all time.
And nothing speaks more to Cameron's relentless perfectionism than the astronomical correction made for that 3D version.
That detail is one of the most incredible footnotes in film history. The astrophysicist Neil deGrasse Tyson contacted Cameron
To point out an error.
Yes, that the star pattern Rose sees in the sky on the morning of April 15, 1912, was incorrect for that location, date, and time.
And Cameron actually changed it.
He accepted the correction. He had Tyson send him the precisely correct star pattern, and the entire scene was digitally replaced for the 3D conversion. That level of detail, correcting the background stars in a fictional love scene, it just underscores his aim for absolute verifiable visualization.
And we have to mention the one piece of cultural conversation that just never dies. The door debate.
The debate over the floating piece of debris, the door. It has fueled countless jokes, serious discussions, scientific studies.
Mythbusters did an episode on it.
They did. Cameron even commissioned his own forensic analysis for a National Geographic special. He has always said that Jack's death was a narrative necessity. The script says Jack dies.
But the public's frustration that they both could have fit, it just won't go away.
No, it cements its status as the most persistent piece of post-release cultural debate.
And the film's language has entered our lexicon. Lines have become memes.
Exactly. The elderly Rose's line, "It's been 84 years," is now common internet shorthand for impatience. It shows how deeply the film has embedded itself into global popular culture.
So when we look at this colossal achievement, what's the ultimate conclusion about the cultural force that is Titanic?
I think the conclusion is in its synthesis. James Cameron took this profound, chaotic historical tragedy and, through an unprecedented production scale built on meticulously researched blueprints and corrected star charts, he created a perfect vessel for emotional truth.
He didn't just recreate the disaster.
He crafted an experience, one that gave a global audience an accessible way to process that history and to feel the human cost. It transformed a historical footnote into a universally shared cultural event.
It's truly unique how it manages to blend that painstaking realism with the power of mythological romance. And that potent combination, it just ensures the experience remains a powerful driver for discussion and debate and repeat viewing, even decades later.
It forces us to reflect on why we as an audience are so drawn to that powerful intersection of history and fiction, and why we collectively yearn to find that single beautiful moment of human connection and sacrifice amid the spectacle of universal chaos.
Thanks for listening.